On the broadcast tonight, the seventh and possibly final attempt by the two Koreas to restart operations at the shuttered joint industrial complex in Gaeseong. We'll have the latest. On the eve of Korea's 68th Liberation Day from Japan's 35-year-long colonial rule, rallies are held in the nation's capital and various cities across the globe, urging the Japanese government to acknowledge and sincerely apologize to the victims of sexual slavery during World War II. And Israel frees 26 Palestinian prisoners to keep a U.S.-sponsored peace process on course. But diplomacy is dogged by Israeli plans to build more Jewish homes on occupied land. Regardless, the second round of peace talks gets underway. This is Early Edition at 6. It is 2 a.m. in Los Angeles, noon in Jerusalem, and 6 on a Wednesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for tuning in. The latest inter-Korean talks, that's our starting point for today.
Right, the two Koreas are back at the negotiating table for the seventh and perhaps final time for talks in reopening the shuttered Gaeseong industrial complex in the north. The talks will be crucial in determining the fate of the factory zone that was shut down about 4 months ago.
That's right. For the latest on the inter-Korean talks currently underway, let's go live to our Hwang Ji-hye standing by at our news center. So, Ji-hye, could you tell us, were the two Koreas able to bridge some of the differences that divide them?
Well, Daniel, it's still too early to make that determination. The two sides met in the morning for talks and were scheduled to start back up at 2 p.m., but that meeting kicked off about 2 hours late and wrapped up at 4:30. The delay was reportedly because Pyongyang was contemplating Seoul's proposal from the morning meeting. A third session started about 30 minutes ago, and the two Koreas are putting forward respective views on how to reopen the complex, and they're expressing their intentions to make progress this time around.
Saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. If both sides concur on the need for progressive development at the Gaeseong complex and work together, I think we can overcome any kinds of problems and difficulties.
The two Koreas share labor and help each other at the industrial complex. The weather is nice, and if we work together, we'll be able to reap a good harvest. If the South actively engages in negotiations, positive results can be reached ahead of the August 15th Liberation Day.
Now, Ji-hye, still both sides seem pretty far apart on a number of key issues.
You're right, Kan-young. The main sticking point is that South Korea wants solid assurances from North Korea that it will not unilaterally shut down operations at the complex, while the North simply wants an immediate resumption of operations without any such guarantee. Another point to note is that Seoul assumes Pyongyang responsible for the current prolonged shutdown. Operations at the Gaeseong industrial complex came to a halt after North Korea withdrew all of its workers in April amid an escalation in inter-Korean tensions. While South Korea remains steadfast over blaming the North for the current shutdown, something to look out for is whether North Korea will admit fault and change its stance. South Korean officials are a little more hopeful in this seventh round of talks, as North Korea has signaled that it wants to resolve the impasse, but they're still approaching the negotiations cautiously. North Korea watchers speculate that the start of the annual Ulji Freedom Guardian military exercise between South Korea and the U.S. on Monday could complicate negotiations if Wednesday's talks hit a snag. Guys?
Well, reportedly the session was extended at the Gaeseong Industrial Complex over the talks this evening, so hopefully we'll be able to see some kind of a significant outcome coming from those talks.
Well, thank you for those updates, Ji-hye. We look forward to more on the Gaeseong Industrial Complex talks.
Now, the U.S. government says it is exploring additional ways to secure the release of Kenneth Bae, an American citizen who's been detained in North Korea for 9 months.
And with South Korea and the U.S. gearing up for a joint military exercise next week, the window for an amicable environment may be closing. Our Jin-ju has the details.
Washington says it is deeply concerned about Kenneth Bae and has once again called on North Korea to immediately release him.
I think we're willing to consider a number of different options to secure his release, but again, the onus is on the North Korean government to do so.
U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Mary Harf also said that there are no current plans to send a high-level official to Pyongyang to help with Bae's release. The possibility of a visit to the north by former U.S. President Jimmy Carter has been discussed in recent weeks. Carter has visited the north several times before on diplomatic missions, the most recent coming in 2010 when he helped free another American who was detained and sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. Meanwhile, some North Korea experts are warning of another possible provocation by Pyongyang. Scott Snyder, senior fellow for Korean Studies at the U.S.-based Council on Foreign Relations, says that although North Korea seems to be trying to engage in talks with the South and other neighboring countries right now, it won't last long. He argues that North Korea's diplomacy comes in 3 stages, ranging from brinksmanship, charm offenses, and renewed provocations, and suggests that the time is ripe for a new provocation. Snyder added that South Korea should thoroughly prepare for any possible scenario, especially with the U.S. and South Korea gearing up for its annual joint Ulchi Freedom Guardian military drill next week. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Here in the nation, the number of people who found jobs in Korea jumped by more than 300,000 for the second straight month in July. Data released by Statistics Korea indicates 367,000 people found work last month, and that brings up the number of employed to nearly 26 million. This is the biggest monthly increase since last October. Officials at the Statistics Office attribute this increase to more recruitment in the public health and social welfare service industries. Meanwhile, the employment rate of people in their 50s has hit a 21-year high. The number of people within that age group who found jobs last month spiked 78% from a year ago.
Korea marks the 68th anniversary of its liberation from Japan's 35-year-long colonial rule this week, but Korea and Japan are still very much at odds over historical issues that stretch back decades.
And many analysts say Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's hawkish foreign policies are only making matters worse. Our Han Daeun takes a look at the shape of Korea-Japan relations today.
Relations between Korea and Japan have been in a deep chill ever since last August, when former President Lee Myung-bak paid a visit to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Islets. Lee's visit was aimed at showing Korea's sovereignty over the islets that are controlled by Korea but also long claimed by Japan. And with Tokyo's various moves to make claims to the islets, the Dokdo issue remains as a source of deep tension between the two countries. Adding to the fuel to the situation, the return of far-right nationalist Shinzo Abe as Japan's prime minister. Following the Abe cabinet's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine last April, Korea called off a bilateral foreign ministers meeting, and a Korea-Japan summit is not even close to being discussed at this point. Breaking with tradition, President Park Geun-hye visited China instead of Japan after her state visit to the U.S. earlier this year. Abe's hawkish foreign policies and his nationalistic efforts to build a stronger, combat-ready military, even at the expense of amending the constitution, are upping tensions not just with Korea but with the whole of Asia.
Our cabinet will firmly protect Japanese citizens' life, assets, and defend our nation's land, sea, and air.
The Korean government is cautiously sizing up Abe's nationalistic moves. Officials say they're keeping an eye on where the Abe administration is headed and monitoring the impact his policies will have. 2013 marks the 68th year of Korea's liberation from Japan, but it looks as though the two countries won't be able to shake off the remnants of Japan's colonization and start a future-oriented relationship anytime soon. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
Now, every Wednesday since January 8, 1992, former military sex slaves for the Japanese military have been gathering in front of the Japanese embassy right here in Seoul to urge Tokyo to apologize, sincerely apologize, for its wartime atrocities.
As our Park Ji-won reports, this Wednesday was no different, although the fact that the event fell on the eve of Korea's Liberation Day did add significance.
The rally put on by former Japanese military sex slaves has been held every Wednesday for more than 20 years now. But this Wednesday's rally was larger than usual because Thursday marks the 68th anniversary of the nation's liberation from Japanese rule. About 1,000 people participated, demanding that the Japanese government officially apologize for forcing young Korean women into sexual slavery during its 35-year colonization of the Korean peninsula.
If the Japanese government makes an official apology and issues compensation, I will follow the saying, hate the sin, but not the sinner. I also call on President Park Geun-hye to address the issue from the perspective of a woman.
Despite repeated calls throughout the years, Japan has yet to offer a sincere apology. Some key Japanese politicians, such as former Chief Cabinet Secretary Yosei Kono in 1993 and former Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama in 1995, acknowledged that Japan was culpable of sexual slavery. But it hasn't been enough to heal the wounds of the victims, especially when Japanese politicians routinely make insensitive remarks about its wartime crimes.
I have been participating in this rally since 2003. The only way to move past this tragedy is for the Japanese government to acknowledge the crimes, apologize sincerely, and give compensation.
I hope the Japanese government admits what it did to Korea in the past and apologizes, so that both countries can work toward healing historical wounds.
This year, 9 different countries, including Japan, Taiwan, the US, and the Philippines, will hold similar rallies as well. About 50,000 to 300,000 women, mostly Koreans, are estimated to have been forced into sexual slavery. And now only 57 people are alive in Korea, and time's running out. A special memorial service was held in central Seoul, dedicated to former sex slave Lee Yong-nya, who just died last week at the age of 87. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, as Korea gears up to celebrate the 68th anniversary of the nation's liberation from Japan's 35-year-long colonial rule, Korea-Japan relations are at a new low, with historical and territorial issues hampering diplomatic relations.
And depending on how Tokyo commemorates August 15th, the ties could improve or deteriorate even further. For more on Seoul-Tokyo relations, we're now joined live by Dr. Bong Young-sik, Director of the Center for Foreign Policy at Seoul-based Asan Institute for Policy Studies.
Good evening, Dr. Bong. Welcome back. All right, so Korea-Japan relations aren't at their best, that's for sure. And the relations have gotten particularly icy since I guess, conservative Prime Minister Shinzo Abe took office. Now, how his cabinet moves tomorrow, that's the Liberation Day for Korea, and the day that Japan marks its defeat in World War II, will be a turning point for either the better or for the worse for their relations. What do you expect to see tomorrow?
Well, in the short term, the Abe government would exercise a decent level of restraint, not to exceedingly provoke neighboring countries such as South Korea and China. I believe that the Abe government's message to governments in Beijing and that in Seoul is that the Japanese government would show a great deal of restraint by not allowing top 4 members of the cabinet, including the Prime Minister Abe himself and Deputy Prime Minister and Taro Aso, and the Chief Cabinet Secretary and Foreign Minister. It is questionable whether that signal would be regarded acceptable to governments in China and South Korea. We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Well, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he's on a historic mission, and part of it includes revising Japan's pacifist constitution. So that's definitely not going to help Japan improve relations with its neighbors. Why is the Japanese leader so adamant on carrying this out?
Because the way that the international relations of Northeast Asia is structured is quite different from the way it was structured during the Cold War era. During the Cold War period, your friends and foes were clearly defined. South Korea and Japan needed each other desperately for their own survival and pursuit of core national interest. But situation today is quite different from the past. So South Korea does not really desperately need Japan for its own pursuit of core national interest, including how to effectively deal with the security interest, including the military threat from North Korea. From the standpoint of Japan, Japan does not really need South Korea as much as it did in the past, because Japan and South Korea are not really seeing eye to eye with regard to forging their cooperation in response to the rising influence of China in the region. So it's both countries are in the situation that is termed in international relations as a situation of mutual abandonment.
So basically, they're not friends in need at the moment.
Right.
But a mutual abandonment, that's very interesting. Now, when Korean presidents give their Liberation Day speeches, Liberation Day meaning August 15th here in Korea, what they say is watched very closely. Now, President Park Geun-hye will be making her first speech as the president of this country on a Liberation Day tomorrow. What can we expect from President Park's speech?
What can you expect from the first speech? A very stern message toward Japan. Direct a demand for heartfelt and sincere apology for the past wrongdoings and atrocity committed by Japan's imperialists in the past. Because the domestic sentiment in Korea is extremely harsh toward Japan and Prime Minister Abe at the personal level. According to our July opinion survey, then in terms of level of trust for foreign country, only 11.4% of South Koreans say that they put trust in Japan, which is even lower than the level of trust that South Koreans put for a country like Israel at the level of 19%. So even for a country like Israel, that South Korea does not really have long historical context or cultural affinities or economic partnership, South Koreans do not really put significant trust in Japan. And in terms of South Koreans' favorability rating for foreign leaders, and the record is also very concerning. In response to the question how much you like the foreign leaders, in the 10-point scale, 0 point meaning the least favorable and 10 point most favorable, US President Obama scored 6.29 and Chinese President Xi Jinping scored 5.35. But Japan's Prime Minister Abe does almost as well as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Abe's score was 1.65, almost one-third of that of the favorable rating for Chinese President Xi Jinping, and almost close to Kim Jong-un's score, which is 1.14. So in the context of domestic politics, as a leader of South Korea, Madam President Park Geun-hye has to pander to harsh and critical public opinion in South Korea towards Japan.
So on the minds of average Koreans, the way they feel about Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is on par, almost on par with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. That's quite surprising.
Yeah, he has a long way to go.
Right.
Okay, well, that's quite surprising. Well, anyway, the diplomatic climate between Korea and Japan exactly not been fabulous. You could compare it to the heat wave we have here, deadly heat wave. Well, anyway, President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, ever since taking office, they have not held not even one summit ever since. August 15th, Liberation Day, could this be a turning point for them to maybe change or shift gears a little bit?
I think both leaders would just pass the Liberation Day tomorrow quietly. And the turning point in the future might be the upcoming G20 summit in Russia in early September. It's up to South Korean President Park Geun-hye to decide whether she would feel necessary to accept the invitation by Prime Minister Abe to hold a bilateral summit meeting somewhere. And it is important, in my personal opinion, for President Park Geun-hye to preemptively and positively consider having a summit meeting with Japanese Prime Minister, because you have to think about the Korea-Japan relationship beyond the bilateral context, because other countries are watching the way South Korea deals with Japan. And Park Geun-hye government declared that South Korea would be the leading country in constructing a peace and cooperation under the slogan of Seoul process. And many Northeastern countries are kind of suspicious because South Korea declared its intention to lead the opening and dialogue in the region, but it has been more or less not showing the interest in doing the same communication dialogue with Japan. So you have to think about the bilateral summit meeting in broader context. Multilateral aspects should be considered.
Right. In order to stay in line with President Park herself, her goal or her initiative, Seoul process of building peace and trust in Northeast Asian region.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dr. Bong Young-sik, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you back here, providing us with more golden insights.
Thank you.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2 points. A special parliamentary committee investigating allegations that the nation's intelligence agency meddled in last year's presidential election convened another meeting Wednesday, but key witnesses summoned for the day failed to show up. But as our political correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports, the two men will have no choice but to appear on Friday.
The witness stands were empty and remained that way, prompting Wednesday's hearing to fall apart. Former National Intelligence Service Chief Won Se-hoon and former Seoul Metropolitan Police Chief Kim Yong-pan, the two figures on top of the witness list for the probe, were no-shows. One was indicted on charges of ordering his agents to post negative comments online about opposition presidential candidates before the December election. Kim stands accused of whitewashing a police probe into the scandal. Won and Kim notified the National Assembly earlier that they wouldn't be attending the hearing, citing poor health and time conflicts as their respective reasons. However, the chairman of the parliamentary committee investigating the charges against them said those were not convincing reasons to skip the hearing. In response to the stalemate and lack of progress in the hearing, opposition lawmakers said Wednesday the National Assembly should issue a warrant to force Won and Kim to come in. But ruling party lawmakers disagreed, saying there is no legal justification to force the two to take the witness stand at the National Assembly. To resolve the impasse, the committee put the matter to a vote. All 9 opposition lawmakers, including the committee chairman, voted in favor of issuing a warrant. 5 ruling party lawmakers voted against, while 2 ruling party members abstained. As a result of the vote, the National Assembly will issue a warrant to bring in Won and Kim on Friday. The parliamentary probe into the charges against them ends next Friday, but it has not yet produced any tangible outcome. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
In sports, Korean pitcher Lee Hyun-jin keeps on rolling right along with his red-hot LA Dodgers ball club. The rookie southpaw picked up his 12th win of the season at Dodger Stadium on Tuesday local time in a 4-2 victory over the New York Mets. Liu gave up just 1 run on 5 hits in 7 innings of work, striking out 3 in the process. He's been an integral part of the Dodgers' success of late. The team has now won 7 straight games for the first time in more than 3 years. And LA has not lost a game in which Liu has pitched since June 19th.
Time for weather. We turn to Hannah Kim. Any dramatic changes can we expect this time, Hannah?
No, Daniel. Actually, our heat wave is not going to cool off anytime soon, so you can expect more hot, sunny weather for the rest of the week and over the weekend as well.
Well, you know, Hannah, I don't like the sound of that, but to cool things off or even heat things up, I hear you have a surprise forecast for us tomorrow, so we will look forward to seeing you somewhere other than the studio tomorrow afternoon.
That's right, Kanyang. So be sure to tune into our newscast on Thursday, which is National Liberation Day. And many of you actually have the day off. So for those of you who want to make plans with your friends or family, there won't be any surprises. Very similar and consistent weather this whole week. We just have a lot of hot and humid air coming in from the south with a dominating high pressure system. But if we take a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, Seoul will start off the morning at 26 and reach 34 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, temperatures in the south like Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 37 and 35 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, we'll have mostly sunny skies. Daejeon and Mount Kumgang will peak out at 35, while Dokdo tops out at 33. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Hannah Kim, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Hannah. That's all from us. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gwon-young, and we'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Good night.